Hi friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Today is October 31st, 2021. I don't think, with everything that I have to do today, that I'm gonna read anything else, so I figured I would take this little bit of time to film the reading wrap up. October was a little bit of a mixed bag. So the first book that I finished in October was Wonderland by Zoe Stage. I actually have a video, a 5-star predictions video, in which I talked about this book and then chose this book and read and reviewed this book. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. This is, I think, the biggest disappointment of 2021 thus far. So the marketing for this is Shirley Jackson meets The Shining. TLDR, both statements are true, but this lacks in the writing department. It lacks the critical thinking, the purpose, the masterful execution of Shirley Jackson, and it lacks the intense, believable character creation of Stephen King. So while not a lie in terms of the marketing, in terms of the execution, an absolute fail in my opinion, had this not been compared to either of those authors, I think maybe I would have been kinder to this text. I don't think it would have been the 2-star read that it is for me. 5-star prediction that ended up being 2 stars, and I feel like 2 stars is being charitable. Like my dislike for this is such that I would love to give it like 0 stars on Goodreads, but I think a lot of that is my bias, and if I sit back and look at it in terms of quality, in terms of what's going on, I think a 2-star is appropriate but generous. That was my start to October. That set the tone. I then finished a highly anticipated read for myself. I have been waiting, I have been searching for Sally Rooney vibes since I fell in love with Normal People, and Normal People grew on me. It was a book that I initially didn't like, and then the more that I read it and reread it, the more I fell in love with those messy, complex characters. And so I was so excited for her newest book, Beautiful World, Where Are You? This came out this year, and again, I was anticipating maybe too much. So this is a very meta text. It's about an author named Alice who has had a bit of a mental breakdown following the success of her 2 published novels, and she's an author that's now living with wealth and fame, and she is known for writing about normal people, and she's talking about how there's this disconnect between like a literary fiction author, like once you are successful, you are no longer living the normal, relatable life, so your work becomes inauthentic, and she's struggling with that. There are 4 characters here that we're really focusing on. Alice, the author. Eileen is this sort of lost friend of Alice living in Dublin. Like, she's working for a literary magazine, dirt poor, and so I think there's like 2 sides of the same coin, 2 people with the same degree, the same sort of interest in literature, and one has achieved mass success and is unhappy, and one is barely scraping by and is unhappy. And then they have their love interests. Alice picks up some guy in the small town that she's living in. He'll put up with none of her bullshit, basically. And then Eileen is interested in a boy who's like, she's known since she was a little kid. Like, he was maybe 8 or 9 years older than her when she was born, and they've always had this sort of sexual tension, and then they start fucking in this book. And the parts where the characters are physically interacting with each other, I thought was interesting. It reminded me a lot of Normal People, that sort of complicated miscommunication stuff. It was the emails between Alice and Eileen that read like Sally Rooney shower thoughts. Like, maybe Sally Rooney should just get a Twitter and tweet these thoughts instead of having these characters email these thoughts that feel much more like the author voicing these thoughts into the void. And I think the construction of this, it's the emails actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that break my engagement because they don't feel like they are in line with the rest of the text. This just didn't work for me, and this was another 2-star read. A new buy, a pre-order, that flopped for me. However, a book that was also very highly anticipated that did not flop is, oh, the text does show up. There's a Ghost in This House by Oliver Jeffers. So Oliver Jeffers is my favorite children's author, I think, at this point. He does really interesting creative works that are silly and engaging for kids, but he is taking his craft as a like trained artist into these books, and he's always doing something interesting with them. One of my favorites that plays with form is This Moose Belongs to Me, and so what he's done is he's collected these thrift store paintings from this one author, or artist, and then he has painted his characters over top of it. Obviously this was like a legal nightmare, having to acquire all of these paintings by this artist to use them to make art to tell a story. So I would say the same thing applies to this. It's a little bit more mixed media. I really like the stuff like this, where you have cutouts from either he's taken the photos and staged it to look like an old book, or it is an old book that he has cut up and he's pieced together a manor house, but then he's drawn in like the lines and the bits and pieces and the character moving through it. The other thing that's really cool about this book is he has taken the photographs, drawn his character in very much in this Moose Belongs to Me style, like a mixed media style, but there are these transparent, like tracing paper pieces that laid over the white page, you can't see where the ghosts are, but you can still read the text. And then when you flip the page, the ghosts then appear over the pictures. And I just think that the creativity of this, like, I love when people put effort into texts for children. Like, I have looked at some truly garbage texts for children as a person who has an interest in children's literature. Oh, like, why? Like, who even published this? Jeffers always has a little bit of a, almost always has a little bit of a lesson, or there's something really engaging and he's thought about doing something creative and innovative with a piece of children's literature and making it something that I could see kids coming back to again and again. Then I read Blood Like Garnets, Haunting Tales of Terror by Leigh Harlen, and I need to make a correction here. At some point, I picked this up for a Women in Horror series, and I have talked about this as for women in horror. However, Leigh Harlen is non-binary and they use they them pronouns, so I need to correct that, and I am going to go correct it in as many videos as I can find. They have created, I think, my favorite short story collection. Like, I find short story collections difficult. I often find that there are more misses than hits. Like, usually there's maybe like one, maybe two in a collection where I'm like, wow. Whereas with this collection, I think there were more hits. The ideas, the execution, the length, because I think sometimes that's difficult as well, like too long, too short. The fact that most of these worked for me, were super enjoyable, creepy, excellent fall horror vibes. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I especially liked the story The New Flesh, which is about a witch who is able to knit skin. She collects gruesome items and makes this special thread and knits skin, and her son was taken by his father and murdered, and she has collected his bones that were scattered by animals, and she's trying to knit him back together, knit him new flesh, and make him live again. And the idea of this sort of woman's art, the domestic, we don't have a scientist, we have a mother, we have somebody who's participating in the domestic arts who is trying to bring their dead loved one to life. I definitely recommend this if you're interested in some spooky short stories. So this came from my TBR. I did pick it up last year and I gave it 4 to 5 stars. The book that makes up for, I think, everything, like all the disappointments, is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. So This came up as an option for the Patron Book Club. It wasn't selected, but I decided to put it on my TBR anyways. I think it's considered sci-fi time travel, but I would also safely put it within horror. A lot of horror by women gets slotted into other categories, often literary fiction. But in terms of the themes, other than the fact that we have time travel, and that tends to be more sci-fi, this is horrific. Dana is a Black woman living in America in the 1970s, I believe 1976. And she keeps randomly getting pulled back into the South. The first time she goes back, it's 1815. She gets pulled into the past by her ancestor Rufus. Every time he's about to die, she gets pulled into the past and she has to save him. And she continues to do it despite him being a little shit whose father's a slave owner, and then he inherits that plantation and all of the slaves and is a man of his time. And she continues to save him to preserve her line, because if he dies before her direct ancestor is born, she will cease to exist. It puts her in this horrific position of having to continually save this absolutely trash human. He is so manipulative, so disgusting. Content warning for sexual assault. She has to let one of her ancestors, her Black ancestor, be raped by Rufus continually. And so there's this constant horrific waiting for Dana. I'm hesitant to use positive language to describe this text. I don't want to say that this text was phenomenal. At the end of the day, it's horror. It's so fucked up. And it's based in reality. Not the time travel part, but the reality of life for enslaved people. Like, enjoyed is the wrong word, right? I was engaged. I was compelled to continue to bear witness to Dana in the past. I'm struggling for words. It's a fantastic piece of writing. I have since picked up a couple of Butler's other works that I'm missing because she has not enough. Her body of works doesn't feel big enough for how good a writer she is, and I'm excited to see that a lot of her works are being republished. I'm looking at a copy of Fledgling. Fledgling was the one that I wanted to pick up, but it's sort of in between printings, so they are re-releasing a hardcover with a beautiful new cover, so I think I'm gonna wait for that. I'm excited that her work is having this like resurgence, this renaissance, so put Octavia Butler on your list. If she's on your radar, pick up whatever sounds the most appealing to you, because all of her work falls into this subversive, genre-changing movement that started happening in sci-fi that we're seeing continue today. I gave this 5 stars. The last book that I read in October is Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller. I can't remember why. I'm not sure if somebody recommended it to me or if I saw the cover and was like, ooh, dead flowers and rotting fruit. All I know is that it arrived. I had no idea what it was about. Didn't even read the dust jacket when I started getting into this. This may be one of my favorite books of 2021. This is a strong contender for like top 10 books of 2021. And it is a quiet, fucked up little read that had me weeping at multiple points. So Unsettled Ground follows 51-year-old twins who still live at home with their mother. They are very poor. Their father died when they were quite young. Their father was murdered by the landowner when they were quite young. And so in exchange for keeping quiet, they believe that there has been a verbal agreement between their mother and the landowner that they can live on the land, on the cottage that they used to rent, for free, and that as long as the twins are living, that space will be held for them to live rent-free. Then their mother dies of a stroke. They discover that there's $2,000 in rent due. There's $850 due to a friend. The mother was given an advance by one of the people that buy the vegetables from their garden. So all of a sudden, these two 51-year-olds are stuck in this small town and have incurred a mass amount of debt that they weren't aware of because their mother kept so many secrets. Things devolve. I feel like even though both twins we flip between their perspectives, Jeannie is definitely our star. Julius is a bit of a shit, and I don't have a lot of sympathy for him. He works a lot of odd jobs, like on contract, like for cash. It's hard work, but it's not consistent work, and the money that he does get, he always puts some aside for himself to go to the pub and have a pint and buy his tobacco and top up his cell phone. While they are struggling to make ends meet, he doesn't make any sacrifices. Whereas Jeannie, who has this heart defect, has never been allowed to leave home, has never finished school, cannot read or write, only has the skills to like work a farm, collect eggs, garden, is still doing the shopping, still doing the cooking, still managing the farm, still trying to take what she can to earn off, like to pay back what their mother borrowed with her vegetables so that they could finally start making money. And like there's a scene where she goes grocery shopping and she has like $5.30. That's all the money that she has. And it's set in contemporary time. Think about how far $5 goes in a grocery store these days. And so she's like, okay, we need oil and we need butter, but I can't afford both. So butter I can fry with and we can put it on our sandwiches, so I'll prioritize the butter. And we're out of shampoo and we're out of soap and we're out of dish soap. I can't afford all three, so I'll buy the dish soap because at least we can wash the dishes and our bodies and our hair with it. We watch her do this like very careful arithmetic with the math skills that she doesn't really have because she was always out of school with her weak heart. Like she just makes the pennies come together to be able to take some stuff home to keep the house. And meanwhile, her brother is working for like $150 a day and coming home at the end of it with only like 20 bucks because he's gone to the pub, he's bought himself lunch, he's bought himself tobacco, he's topped up his cell phone. I felt so frustrated for Jeannie, and she's so stuck, and you are bearing witness to somebody on the fringes of society who is trying so hard. Julius, I don't know if he's trying that hard because he still manages to find money for the pub and tobacco. But Jeannie is like eating raw radishes from the garden because that's literally all the food that she has. And like vegetable guy doesn't want radishes from her, so she can't eat the vegetables that will sell, but she'll eat the vegetables that like he doesn't want. And her brother's off digging around, and like you're just bearing witness to her become more and more on the fringes and feeling too proud to ask for help. I was so emotionally invested in this very quiet story. This was such a surprise. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. So that was a phenomenal way to wrap up October. There were definitely some highly anticipated absolute failures and then some quiet surprises, and I think it was a fantastic reading month. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What are you reading? Have you read any of these books? Are you putting Octavia Butler on your library holds list as we speak? Please do. Before we go, we have to thank my patrons. They make videos like this possible. Currently, we are reading The We Free Men as our patron book club of the month. The meeting for that is in November on the 13th. I will leave links for that down below if you're interested in supporting the channel. I hope you are doing well, that you are staying safe, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye!